a good trick for young filmmakers, or for anybody who's young trying to think of like a way to write something or create something, is to just start with something you really love. Like, I mean, literally start with it and take that story and then just alter it a little bit so that it can be yours. Even though you're completely copying it and maybe you don't get anywhere with it, it can take away the fear of starting in such a way that you'll start doing something, and then maybe you make a decision or you find something in it that is uniquely your own, and then you focus on that and you run with it.
Hello, kind of an unusual video from me and a rare upload on this channel. So back in the day, I had interviewed Matt Johnson, the actor and director of Nirvana the band, The Show, Blackberry, Tony. This was all the way back in 2018. Shortly after they filmed an episode of the Viceland TV show in ANC Games, the video game shop that I used to work at. I quite liked this interview because of the honesty of Matt's answers, and I thought it was completely lost to time, but a friend recently found it and sent it over. So what I did was cut out the embarrassing intro and outro, cut out a few ums and likes, and threw some video on screen to keep your eyes entertained. Matt has some genuinely great advice about creating, interesting thoughts on the phenomenon of Canadian brain drain, where it seems Canada's top talent all leave when they get somewhat big. He shares that advice I used in the intro, how new and intimidated writers should just try to make something they already love, and by the fact that it's you trying to make it, it'll start to become its own thing. I applied that line of thinking when I was writing Dot Monster Revolution, which is undeniably similar to Digimon and Pokemon, but I like to believe that through writing it, it took on its own identity. Keep in mind his advice here: make the thing you love that already exists, and you'll almost accidentally make it into its own thing. He told me that at the start of 2018, 7 years before Nirvana the band, the movie, did a time travel plot that was awfully similar to Back to the Future while managing to feel completely original still. Okay, enough yapping from me. Enjoy this unearthed lost media interview with Matt Johnson.
The first time you and I met, you were in character doing an episode at ANC Game. So here you are, you show up as this like super cartoonish man-child, and every time I see you now, I have to spend a second to realize, is this Matt Johnson the human being or Matt Johnson the character? Do people in your personal life have that issue, or do they still have that issue, or did they ever?
In my personal life, not at all, because everybody knows me.
Right.
Not only that, but I would just never. I'm never doing the show with anybody in my personal life, or, well, I mean, to put it simply, everybody in my personal life works on the show.
Right.
All my friends work on the show with me, so they'll always know if we're shooting the show, and they're so with it, like there's no way they would ever be fooled by anything. Plus, well, yeah, it just, no, never. But in terms of people who just vaguely know me, especially when Jay and I are doing something together, or when Jay and I are together, I think sometimes there's a question of whether or not we're shooting. But every single time we go into a place where we're dealing with the public and we don't want them to know sort of what we're doing, we're not acting too different than the way we acted when we were 13, 14 years old.
Right.
So I can understand that idea of you dealing with people who really are that way, because I think it's just the way that sort of adolescent people behave. They're super excited, they ask a lot of questions, and they're very straight-faced when they're saying things that are, to adults, completely absurd.
Yeah, I think places like ANC and other video game shops like bring that out of you too. So one thing I know you guys do, which I think is super cool, it's in Nirvana the band, The Show, and it's in your films as well, is that you do this really cool thing where your characters are always just your name.
Well, it started because when we were first making Nirvana the band, The Show, originally, both Jay and I just didn't even think to have other names. It wouldn't have made sense. But then, almost for practical reasons, it became a good decision, because we were shooting all the time with people who knew us and people who didn't know us, and with people who would be interacting with us, sometimes not knowing that there were cameras rolling. And so if we had fake names, and somebody went, "Hey, Matt," or somebody I knew stopped me and said Matt, or somebody wanted to talk to Jay, and they used a name that wasn't their character's name, we just wouldn't be able to use the footage. And so it quickly carried over into everything that I did, where I was always calling myself Matt Johnson and always having any of the other actors use their real name as well, just because it makes it so easy. It also makes it easy to forget that you're shooting a movie, because you just are yourself.
Right.
And it's a lot easier to bring yourself to a role when you don't have a name like Harvey or John. Well, in my case anyway, a name that's not your own name.
Sure.
Because you can get lost in it, because a part of you thinks you're just hanging out with your friends. And so the trick that you're trying to play on audiences, you're also trying to play on yourself. where rather than dissociating your own personality to become somebody new, you're trying to really be yourself. It's almost like a shortcut to method acting, how people would try to bring their own emotions and their own emotional experience to a character.
Yeah.
Here you can just react and behave the way that you really would, and you are playing a character. It's just you, which is why in Nirvana the band, especially when Jay and I start laughing, or when we surprise one another, or when we make a mistake specifically, it's almost impossible to break character, because these guys are just laughing at themselves in the way that they really would laugh at themselves. And some of the best footage we have is when Jay and I are making mistakes and not behaving the way that we think that we should be behaving, because then it's a real reaction.
I've also heard you say like the show could only exist in Toronto. I think you're largely referring to the way that people react to you guys. But did you want to expand on that, like how the show is really molded by the people who live in the city?
Well, of course. I mean, you're a great example of that. When we went into ANC Games, you go in and everybody's totally friendly, everybody's completely happy, and the patience that people have in Toronto, and I would say Canada generally, is unbelievable. I know that I think internationally, I mean, the Canadians are seen as quite friendly, but I think it's not the type of friendliness where they're coming up to you in the street and saying, "Oh my gosh, how are you?" That's not really reality. Canadians really are quite private, and they keep to themselves, and they don't generally step out of their shell to interact with somebody else. But if somebody does that to them, they have almost endless patience to help that person, which is such an unbelievably, well, I mean, that's an incredible quality, and really kind of encompasses at least all the people that we interact with in the show. And it's one of the great things about shooting a show where you play a really stupid person who's always a little behind what reality is like, because people, one, can't believe that you are this way and instantly sympathize with you in the real world, and they always try to help. They always try to help Jay and I, because we seem like we're just lost.
So clueless. So on the flip side of that too, I mean, like we've talked about how Nirvana the band, the show, it's something that can only really be made here, but there's also this weirdly, and I think uniquely, like Canadian content thing where people don't really care about Canadian media or shows until they leave, like until they become some sort of international hit or something like that, whether that's music or movies or TV. Do you find that to be true? And if so, I mean, why do you think that's the case?
Definitely. But, it's funny. There's a real chicken and the egg thing happening there. And so the first part of that is, yes, there is definitely a are we good enough syndrome, almost like a little brother syndrome that I think it lives in all Canadian media, which is like, if we say, I mean, right now it's the Canadian Screen Awards. And if you've ever been to the Canadian Screen Awards before, they give out, I think, literally hundreds of awards for just about every single category you can think of. And there's a feeling in the room when you're there of everybody kind of gritting their teeth being like, we deserve these awards, right? Like, this is good enough, which is ironic because, of course, they do. And, of course, Canadian media is great. But there's a feeling that in the back of everyone's head that, oh, maybe it's not good. Maybe it isn't good and it's just us fooling ourselves. And that's why when anything develops any type of following outside of the country, there's almost like a relief, like, oh, that really is good. It's almost like,
it's like a validation.
When people other than your parents tell you you're doing a good job, that it's very much that same type of syndrome. But there's another side to that, and that's that because of the way the Canadian system works, the cliche is that a lot of the successful people are the people with quote-unquote talent leave. They go to Los Angeles or they go to New York. And that's certainly the case with like the great generation of comedians who were here, 30 years ago, 40 years ago.
Right.
John Candy, then all the SCTV guys, then Jim Carrey. Like these people, Mike Myers, they all, there's this crazy brain drain. Yeah. Martin Short's another great example. And again, that's not criticism of them. They were just going to where the opportunities are. It's sometimes not that things need to leave to be appreciated, which I think is true, but it's also that a lot of really, really talented Canadians wind up being drawn to the States because they have such huge opportunities there. Totally. But I'm hoping that at least in the next generation or so, that starts to change, at least in terms of filmmaking. But that's a really hard thing to fight, just because there's so much money and so many opportunities in America.
It goes everywhere too, whether it's the tech space or the music space. The government's like racking their brain trying to figure out how to keep people here. And you were talking just at the beginning about a new initiative that you guys are doing with the
it's a fund run by Telefilm called Talent to Watch, which is a program that's going to fund 50 first features every single year with the intent of jumpstarting a huge amount of filmmakers and hopefully retaining them, especially the ones who start to have success. Because it's the philosophical model of it is that we're trying to give people a path forward, a real path to success, where we're, for a small amount of money, about $125,000, greenlighting their first feature. And they need very little experience. They just sort of need to be approved by either a film school or a film festival. And then they have a chance to get this money. And then if their first feature winds up playing at any international festivals that are of some renown, then we automatically greenlight them for $500,000 to make their second feature. So hopefully that can, at the very least, start to carve a small path for some voices to find a space here in Canada.
Wow. And that's good to go, more or less? Like you were saying just before this, you were having a meeting about that?
No, it's begun, yeah. So we look at the first round of applicants at the end of April.
Okay.
2018 will be the first 50 filmmakers.
That's amazing.
Cool. Well, it was definitely one of those unlikely dreams.
Right.
I've been talking about sort of reform at Telefilm for a while, and I was amazed at how responsive they were to it. It's a testament to the executive team over there, especially the now retiring director, Carol Babant. They came in and were really interested in making positive change, and so far it's been amazing.
I wanted to talk about offending and offensive content, I guess. There was this quote, I was just doing a little bit of research before this. You were talking to the Manitoban, and you were basically saying with Nirvana, you were expecting people to be more offended. You were saying that you thought the first and only reaction would be like how unbelievably offensive the show is, but no one is really raising their pitchforks, as far as I can see.
Yeah, none of the... We had thought that the critical response to the show would be like that they couldn't believe that it was put on television, because at a certain level we're trying to make an anti-TV show, a show that breaks just about whatever rules that you thought existed for television, and that was one of them. Having characters who were so clueless about political correctness and would say things that were just completely verboten in polite society. But I mean, I think it speaks to the intelligence of the audience, and we completely misjudged that. It seems like almost everybody who's watching the show just sort of sees where these guys are coming from and why we're having them talk that way. So that was actually pretty uplifting, to be honest.
Yeah.
We thought there was going to be a lot of people being like, "I can't believe this. This is disgusting," but it wasn't at all.
Yeah, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but in a way, like the way I see it is that what you're doing with these guys is kind of showing like just these two folks who are completely stuck in time. But also saying like, hey, this is what we believed in the 90s. This is how people like behaved.
Well, and specifically, like these are guys who were programmed by 90s media.
Yeah.
Like this is people who took 90s media and 90s politics at face value,
right,
and thought, well, that's just the way that it is. Which is so funny because, especially right now, the 90s are such a... I mean, that is the decade. That's where we're getting all of our fashion. Everything in the media is basically a rehash of the 90s. It's sort of the current golden age of television and movies. But weirdly, nobody's critical of it. Well, I shouldn't say nobody. There's plenty of people who are extremely critical of media from that era.
There's a Vice article here and there calling out Friends and stuff like that. But yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, that's the generation that I grew up in, and I mean, certainly it had a huge impact on me. And so I think playing those characters is a way for us to speak clearly through the lens of those old shows, in a way that's quite cathartic, actually.
Yeah, it feels to me like you're confronting that in a way, and I think that's super cool because, at least in my experience, and maybe yours too, I feel like Canadian storytelling is super shallow in terms of its niceness, and it feels and it feels like we're kind of afraid to get our hands dirty or tell stories about things that happened, or really like confront those demons. All we ever get is like corner gas, which I love, or like bon cop, bad cop, but not really. I don't know. You know what I mean? It's kind of like Canadians like shackled themselves with this image of kindness, maybe to their detriment.
Yeah, and pleasantness all the time.
Yeah.
Like, I think pleasantness is a really important quality for a lot of Canadian stuff. And again, I think that also is a symptom of how things are funded. I mean, most of the things that you just mentioned, those are all government-funded shows. I mean, Bun Cup, Bad Cup is a nationally funded film, and Corner Gas, it was a nationally funded show. And so it's always tough when your main source of funding is the government or these big media funds to do things that are going to rock the boat in a way that is going to have this fund going, well, why are we paying you to make that?
Right.
How can you justify doing something that's offensive or is going to make people angry using their own money?
Totally.
And so I think that's always been something that stood in the way of that type of stuff. But it's changing a little bit. I think that as the cost to produce movies and TV shows comes down, which it has drastically, it means that smaller shows like ours and smaller independent films can take crazier risks because they don't cost $10 million to do, and nobody's going to kick up much of a fuss over that amount of money being spent if they're offended by it.
I just want to talk about mixing media, because that's kind of the multidisciplinary collaboration that happens in certainly Toronto, maybe Canada, abroad. I know you guys work with a pretty tight crew that seems to carry over,
and everybody does multiple jobs as well, which is I think pretty rare.
Yeah. The other thing, obviously, your show, we kind of touched on it with just that 90s pop culture, but you throw in video game references, music references, film stuff galore, all goes into this TV show. Was there ever any, idea about mixing media there, or was it purely this idea that this is what these guys do and love?
Well, we were trying to make the show represent the things that Jay and I were really interested in, and because that ran the gamut between music, television, video games, and TV shows, it just made sense to have all those things interacting with it. And then pretty early on, we thought, we need each episode to literally parody different pieces of culture that these guys would love. It almost clicked, and we were like, so we'll have episodes that mimic video games, and we'll have episodes that mimic other TV shows and mimic other movies. And then as soon as we started down that path, it became very obvious I shouldn't say obvious, it just became really exciting to look for new opportunities to do that kind of thing. So again, that episode that we shot in your store is we wanted to base the entire thing on Goldeneye 64. So whenever we would go to do anything, we always had Goldeneye in the back of our head. And whatever we could take from that, whether it's the music, which we took tons of, or actual gameplay, or the opening credits, because everything is trying to tell a story at some level, where it's a video game. I mean, this is obvious for movies and TV shows, but music as well. They all have some type of narrative power, and they all use different narrative tricks. It becomes very easy to identify ways to steal from them to do our own narrative stuff. And so the number of ways you can twist that is really fun to discover. And it's a game that we love playing. I mean, that's one of the funnest things to do, especially when you're stuck. Something I'm always telling, I shouldn't say always, but a good trick for young filmmakers, or for anybody who's young trying to think of like a way to write something or create something, is to just start with something you really love. And literally start with it. So, if you love, you can pick any movie. You really love The Big Lebowski. Sure. Start with The Big Lebowski. Take The Big Lebowski and take that story and then just alter it a little bit so that it can be yours. And if you begin with something that you really love and is really interesting to you, even though you're completely copying it and maybe you don't get anywhere with it, it can take away the fear of starting.
Yeah.
The fear of the blank page, the fear of not knowing what to do, in such a way that you'll start doing something, you'll start going down some direction, and then maybe you make a decision or you find something in it that is uniquely your own, and then you focus on that and you run with it. And that's one of the tricks that we use when we're writing the show, which is that we don't need to start from nothing. It's not like, okay, so Matt and Jay are sitting in the apartment trying to come up with an idea.
Right.
It's never like that. We're like, let's do a Goldeneye episode. Yeah. Let's do a Dog Day Afternoon episode. Let's do an episode that uses the crank opening credits and go from there. And so it just gives us a tiny piece of solid ground that we can build around, which is a great writing tool.
Yeah, well, there's like this amazing Robert Rodriguez quote. I think it's him, and maybe I'm paraphrasing, but along the lines of like everybody has 50 awful movies inside of them, and the faster you get them out, the better you get to your masterpiece, right?
Oh, do I ever agree with that? I mean, that's one of the hard lessons you learn in film school, that just about everything you make is so important to you at the time. And you're like, oh my God, this is going to be amazing. It's going to be amazing. And then you finish it, 5 months go by and you look at it and you're like, oh my God, this is awful.
Yeah.
But that I think that's one of the secrets about going to film school that film schools don't tell you. And that's that you need to come here to make all your garbage.
Yeah.
Like, come to a place where it's safe to make trash that nobody will see except for your peers. And then you can graduate having already made all that garbage. Yeah. And you'll be so far ahead of the people who haven't stuck around making just trash because they had to, because they were forced to by an institution. That is an unbelievably true statement that I wholeheartedly agree with.
Yeah, there are probably some Nintendo reviews I wrote in 2008 that I hope never see the light of day, because that stuff just I know is going to be awful.
And yet I think there's no shame in that, and it should be embraced. The idea that people I think a real terrible problem with how the arts and artists are regarded, that it's just this complicated genius syndrome where everybody views directors or showrunners or writers as people who just have got it and everybody else doesn't have it, and they just know what they're doing. And that's not how it is at all. I mean, there's an entire history of failure that you don't see with everybody who's successful. You're only getting to see all their absolute best stuff, and the stuff that got them there.
Oh, of course.
You'll never see.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing, same problem people have with social media today. It's just the idea. It's just the greatest hits highlight reel, which is the same of any content you put out.
Yes,
right?
Exactly. Yes, terrible.
Do you have any interest in working outside of film or television? Would you ever want to make like a game or a comic, or are you strictly wanting to stay in the world of film?
No, you know what? I play in a board game group.
Right on.
And I have for a while, and I've always really, really, really wanted to make board games, and I guess that extends to video games. Although lately I'm so into board games or any type of turn-based game that's sort of where my interest is. But no, I would like to do anything. The collaborative nature of film and television is so exciting to me that I don't think I'm going to leave that anytime soon, just because it takes a long time to get comfortable with that, and I really, really love it. And I love the team that we work with. Yeah. I mean, unless I could get all of us to come and work on, making a comic book or a video game, I wouldn't that wouldn't interest me right now, because it's such a personal, private thing to be doing. But I love those things, and I hope that one day in my life I'll get to do that. I'd love to make a Nirvana the band video game. I know Jay would as well.
Oh man,
I think that would be amazing. But again, we don't have any of the expertise to do something like that.
Yeah, just what would that be? Just like a 16-bit side scroller, I have to imagine, a beat 'em up.
Yeah, something. I mean, Scott Pilgrim was a great example
of
how a movie can turn almost perfectly. I guess a comic book really can turn almost perfectly into a video game that completely and totally is resonant with the source material. Yeah. I mean, that was such a home run. I couldn't believe that game when I first played it. I was like, this is they absolutely killed it. And I don't think Nirvana the band would be in too different a world. I think when we talk about it, we talk about sort of the perfect world for it being in one of those what was LucasSoft point and click games.
Oh yeah.
like Sam and Max or Escape from Monkey Island. I think that would be a really, really awesome platform for Nirvana the band game.
Text-heavy Nirvana the band game.
But also I think a game that went through genres would also really fit, like where each level was a different engine. But that again, this is one of the reasons why we wouldn't be able to make this game. We need somebody who really knew what they were doing.
Yeah, it's a whole other beast. Okay, let's wrap up. But one final question for you. I'm hoping to get one recommendation. It could be a song, it could be an album, it could be a show.
Well, I could tell you about a show that it was a big inspiration to me that not a lot of people in Canada have seen. Maybe you've heard of it. It's by an Australian guy named Dario, and it's called Danger 5.
No, I haven't heard of it.
And it's on a It's a Australian show. You can only get it in Australia, but this show is like unbelievable. It was around back in 2012, 2013, but it's one of those shows that you have to be seen to be believed. In like our show, it deals with a whole bunch of cliches except from the 70s, and it's. Do you remember that Muppet show, Thunderbirds?
Sure, yeah.
Did you ever see that? It feels a little bit like that, except it's live action, and it's so good. If you've never seen it, go check it out. Even just watching the trailer, you'll see what I mean. It's called Danger 5.
Danger 5. Right on.
Yeah.
All right, Matt, thanks so much, eh?
It was great talking to you, Cor.